All right. Well, you guys, this is Angel. Angel is Mr. Awesome. He's like Mr. Personality at the airport. We love that Rocky Mountain Metropolitan Airport. So without any further ado, we'll just go ahead and talk about the great things about Angel. So Angel flies in helicopters. He is a drone pilot. He has won an Emmy Award for your drone videography, and he has learned to fly, went through all the ratings. Now he's a CFI-I. So he has a lot of great things going on in his life. He's always around aviation, around videography, and just a really charismatic personality. We're really happy to have you with us today, Angel.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I keep jumping off and on the camera, but I'll explain why in a second. In that case,
yeah,
just pop this little button here. Okay, well then, fantastic.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank
and you also
everybody.
work for Fox News. You did work for Fox News.
And you know what? Now that you mention it, okay. So since you're going that route, let me just get right off with that. So first of all, absolute huge thank you Trimby, for the invitation, and thank you to your entire organization for having me in your meeting this month. So I really appreciate any organization that is willing to go out and try to spread the word of what aviation, we're not talking the airlines, we're talking general aviation necessarily. You guys obviously are all for all aviation, but I am a huge general aviation fan. And as most of us were, right? We all started in general aviation and worked our way to different varying parts of the industry. Some of us are actually still just getting started, and some of us can barely get off the ground. Sorry, Megan. But I do appreciate any organization, especially like yours, that's helping put a positive spin on aviation. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming.
We're going to talk about this. This right here is the Eurocopter. It's actually, Eurocopter is a company that it was formerly known as Eurocopter. It got bought by the company Airbus. And if you probably have heard of Airbus. Airbus picked up the whole entire division of helicopters from Eurocopter. This little guy is called the Courrier, and that's, I think, that was my butchered attempt at saying squirrel in French, but it is a French helicopter, Courrier. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I actually have a separate camera over here that we'll use for a little insider tour exclusive to you all as soon as I'm done with my presentation. The presentation, generally, I'm just going to go for, I honestly am going to keep it to 15 minutes. We don't, maybe 20 at most. And then we'll just have a little question and answer. Maybe take a quick break so you guys can do some housekeeping. I'll set up to go do our tour inside the helicopter, or maybe we'll flow right on into it and I can show you kind of how I do my job there. So we'll talk about the helicopter in a moment. And no, this is not some virtual background, because Katie, I think, asked that. That's really funny. This is the real deal. I'll kind of actually walk up to it right now here, show you, just to kind of as a teaser. We're going to be inside this thing real soon here, so stay tuned for that. And then make sure you're recording this, because your friends are going to be incredibly jealous. All right, I started 1999, right? 94, wanted to be a pilot, totally down for that. And I was like 14, brought out all the dollars that I had, everything I could do to try to become a pilot, working out odd jobs and whatnot, kind of like a lot of us. More than anything, I really just wanted to be in aviation, generally speaking. But pilot, that's the most front-facing manifestation of aviation, right? The pilot. Everybody sees the pilot, then they see the airplane, or they see the airplane, then they see the pilot. Those are the two main figures there. So of course I wanted to be a pilot. Went to a flight school, and like a lot of things, I felt hurt. I was lost, and because I couldn't get a medical. It turns out I had a couple of issues when I was a kid. To be honest, I would have qualified for a medical, but the process was so complicated, and my parents, they're Puerto Rican descent. So by the way, if that's a question you have, I am Puerto Rican. That's where Angel comes from. My Puerto Rican, parents had no idea how to navigate a system as complex as the FAA, especially pre-internet days, right? So getting letters of denials and trying to write AFS dash blah, blah, God knows what, couldn't get the medical. All right, so fast forward, 1998. All right, I'm feeling great. I'm going to go to school. I'm like, I'm going to do something in aviation. There's a community college down the street. I have just enough government grant money to go to school, and they had this AMP program. That's airplane mechanic, airframe and power plant mechanic program at the local community college. And my rear end runs right to the college as soon as I graduate. I'm like, yeah, here we go. Aviation's going to happen. Aviation's going to happen. Wouldn't you know it? I walk in, I go talk to the guidance counselor, and they tell me, oh, we're discontinuing all of those aviation things at this semester. This is the last semester we're doing it. And I'm like, okay, I was clearly not meant to go to school. I'm quitting college. I don't care. Forget this. This is dumb. I'll go find something else to do with my life. Maybe I'll work at the Cheesecake Factory. I don't know. But ended up that as I'm walking out of the school, I walk right by the TV department and the radio station that they have at the school. I stick my nose in for a second, and there's the director. His name's Dick Chase, Richard Chase, but he goes by Dick Chase on the radio. And he was like this super flamboyant, very loud and exciting dude. And he was, kind of showing me the radio station, takes me over into the TV studio. I'm like, all right, man, this TV studio seems pretty cool. And so he just kind of, I told him my little story, and he goes, you should try this TV thing. And I'm like, nah, forget it. That's not for me. I want to be a pilot. I don't think so. And he goes, well, you weren't going to throw anything anyway, right? You were going to give up anyway. You might as well give this a shot. And if you don't like it, you can get out of here. Anyway, I went ahead and gave it a semester. And sure enough, it turns out I was kind of good at it, and I really kind of liked it. So fast forward to that internship, shaking hands. There is a moral to the story, so pay attention. Get my first job in TV in the middle of my second internship at the ABC affiliate in Colorado Springs. Are there any Colorado Springs folks joining us? Anybody who's familiar, at least with Colorado Springs, besides the touch and goes that you do? Nobody's been to Colorado Springs other than the airplane restaurant. Nonetheless, Colorado Springs, right? I get that job, and at the ABC affiliate as a cameraman, a photojournalist is the official term. They hooked me up in the middle, shaking hands and whatever, and being a good just student. The sports guys say, you could totally handle this cameraman thing. You can do it. Get the job, totally rock it. And I kill it for 5 straight years. I totally just kill the game up there. Get to 2005, and there's a job opening in Denver, Colorado for this TV station called Fox 31 News. They're still around too. KDVR are their call letters. I get a job there, and immediately my money like doubles. Like I go from like $21,000 a year, making $11 an hour. I jump right on up to like a $42,000 a year job. Not big money, but when you're my age, you know what I'm saying? When you're 20, 40 grand a year, man, I was just gassed up. I was on cloud 9. So of course, 2005, all my medical issues had expired. And next thing I know, I'm thinking like, you know what I'm going to do with this extra money before I go commit to anything else. So ended up being right down to the nearest flight school. I ended up finding a flight school in Colorado Springs. So I commuted back and forth, got that private pilot's license, came on up back to Denver, and I was finally that pilot that I always wanted to be. All right, so here we go. Now I'm going to hit my presentation a little bit, because the rest of this presentation for the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to show you then. Now I'm a cameraman. I'm at Fox 31. I'm a pilot, but it didn't quite get I didn't quite get to where I'm at now. I didn't really kind of hit my stride and I just became a CFI-I a week and a half ago, Trimby. Yeah, like last week I became a CFI-I. Craig Thigh was my DPE. And that's a long road, but the thing is that this long road, I was having a really, really good time. Let me show you what I was up to, okay? So let me just switch it up real quick. I'm gonna go to my presentation. Haha, here we go. And we'll go full screen. All right, so this is my presentation. What I like to call it is what I learned about being a pilot without actually being a pilot. So it turns out that in whatever it is that you do for a living right now, maybe that's all you've done is train to be a pilot. That's fantastic. But there are still elements in your life, much like elements in my life, and particularly in the TV business. And I figure since I'm kind of here because you might be a little bit interested in the TV stuff, not just the aviation stuff, I'm going to go over the parallels and the connectors with that. As I learned to be a pilot, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm a better pilot because I could do this in the TV world. So this is kind of what this presentation is. What you should be looking at, and it looks like you are, is that, well, this is the BJC tower. We actually just shot this about a month ago. They'd been kind of on us. The tower, we fly in the helicopter a lot and constantly coming back and forth, takeoff, landing. And then the pattern was pretty clear that day. And Cheryl over at the tower was kind of saying, hey, if you ever are able to get our Christmas lights, that'd be kind of cool if you can get a shot or two. The day happened, everything worked out really well. We had a few extra minutes on the helicopter. And so our pilot, Bo Badur, was able to kind of give me a little orbit around this. This is not a drone. This is a sexy, sexy shot coming from this big bird right here. Not hating on drones, but that's what we got right there. That's the BJC tower. And they did a really good job. It's probably hard to spell something with that good handwriting out of lights at that size. So this presentation called Use Your Experiences. Let's get right into it. All right, just gonna, again, 5 bullet points here. It's just gonna be short and sweet. Public speaking. Okay, what you just saw right there, that was kind of wacky, is a short video. This is me at Red Rocks. And what happened there, this is the Stevie Wonder concert that came out, I think it was about 2 years ago. This homie Stevie Wonder, if you're not familiar, look him up. A blind musician, singer, pianist, songwriter. His songs are absolutely crazy famous. You're probably laughing at me right now because you're like, huh, duh, how do I not know Stevie Wonder? But just in case, look him up. Stevie Wonder concert. And that is literally a packed crowd at Red Rocks. And I got to be at the very, very front. What does this have to do with aviation? Well, first of all, public speaking. I did not speak at this concert, but what it did teach me, all right, one of the things, I got to do this a lot. I had to be in front of crowds and crowds of people. And as part of the news, sometimes you're covering breaking news. Sometimes you're covering events that are this large. Sometimes you're just covering day-to-day news where you're maybe interviewing somebody about an interesting topic. You know, maybe it's a landlord of shame, right? Maybe we're chasing them around a little bit. But what you learn is very quickly, you have to get pretty comfortable with meeting strangers, being in front of strangers, and also representing yourself well. You know what that's like? It's when you put on, for example, like, you're gonna hear the microphone ruffle a little bit, but I have my little, kind of like I'm Superman here. I'm gonna switch cameras, stop the share for a second. It's kind of like when you're a pilot, especially, and if there's any airline pilots here, it's kind of like that, right? You put on that uniform, your logo's on there, okay, and now everybody and their mom wants to talk to you, and whether you're tired or not, you got to put on that face. You got to put on that smile and shake those hands and say, oh yeah, it's a pleasure. Doesn't matter that you just, came off a turn and you're in a rush to get into your next, to catch a flight home so you can finally end your shift and commute back. People are still expecting you to just be the super nice pilot. Well, it's the same thing. You got to be the super nice cameraman. So that was a super useful skill that I picked up just from being a photojournalist in the news. So good. And so I couldn't believe how well that translated into being a pilot until I started representing the different organizations that I represent. We shared the screen here. All right, so what's next? Complex systems. Oh my gosh. If you have heard, please, and feel free to take a minute. There aren't too many of us. Who's seen this machine? Has anyone watched Fox 31 locally here in Denver, Colorado? And yeah, you have. Trimby doesn't count. Trimby's like, Trimby's a news nerd, a news junkie. But yeah, this is called the Pinpoint Weather Beast. It is the most overbuilt, most complicated weather chasing vehicle I've ever seen in my life. In fact, it might be the most complicated weather vehicle you'll ever see anywhere in this country. Very, very few rival this machine, but this is a Ford, oh gosh, it's like a 350. I think it's the right model, but this thing is lifted. It's got big old nested tires. And this snow here, by the way, was my life. It felt like forever. And this is kind of what burnt me out too in the news business. I went to cover snowstorm after snowstorm, and it seemed like every snowstorm, for God knows what reason, the producers said, all right, it's snowing. Angel, you're going to the Eisenhower Tunnel. And I don't know why, what's so special about the Eisenhower Tunnel that they wanted us up there. But I guess it's kind of where the first snows come down. It could be crazy. I mean, seriously, this snow that day, this shot you're seeing here, it was snowing like this at the Eisenhower Tunnel. It was pretty much just nothing. There was nothing in Denver. Maybe a broken layer of clouds 20,000 feet up, you know, but nothing, no precipitation at all in Denver. But of course, producers want that beautiful, what they call a sexy shot. So Angel has to make that 2-hour drive, and it is 2 hours in the Weather Beast because you got to drive a little slow to get up to the Eisenhower Tunnel. But what did this teach me? This thing is crazy complicated on the inside, man. And it's got buttons all over the place. Oh man, I just realized I had some pictures I could have showed you, but nonetheless, what it taught me is how to troubleshoot, because out of as complicated as it is, these engineers, they think, here, let me look you in the eyes when I say this. The engineers who built this thing really, really think that they've built the most user-friendly device that exists, right? It's only 5 or 6 button pushes to get any single thing to work on it, right? So super easy. What could possibly go wrong? Anyway, it's a very complicated machine. It was breaking down all the time, but when you're sitting in a snowstorm like that, you're stuck somewhere, you have to start dealing and troubleshooting systems pretty quickly, and you have to be pretty competent on your own. So what does that mean in aviation? All right, if once you become a flight instructor, you get out there 7 o'clock in the morning, or maybe 8 o'clock at night when you got that night cross country. Maybe it's not a flight instructor. Maybe you're just a student, or maybe you're just working on building hours. You got to start troubleshooting and dealing and understanding these systems in your aircraft. And to have that sort of mentality, that means you have to be willing to kind of nerd out a little bit. Believe me, I'm not a nerd kind of dude. At least I wasn't until I kind of got into the news business and started becoming a pilot. Once I became a pilot, I realized how deep the rabbit hole goes when it comes to technical stuff. And the news business really, really helped foster that, right? So you have to kind of like your systems. I didn't like the Weather Beast, man. My butt hurt for hours. It's not the most comfortable ride, but nonetheless, by driving the Beast hours on end, year after year, snowstorm after snowstorm, I eventually became pretty darn competent at not only chasing weather, but fixing the darn Weather Beast. Because the real engineer of the Weather Beast, I think, was just saying. So nonetheless, Weather Beast, fantastic vehicle that otherwise it was still fun to drive. It's still kind of cool to drive around in, but understand systems, get a tenacity for it. And yeah, go in there, you know, look at the fuel system, look at the electrical system, whether you're looking at a Cessna 172, a Cirrus SR-20, an Embraer regional jet, or any 747 pilots in here? Anyway, not me. But nonetheless, don't be afraid to look up your systems. There's a big point I'm getting to here. Let me go back to the share again. You guys are so patient with me. Thank you very much for letting me jump back and forth between the share here. All right, working in tight spaces. If you've been in a Cessna 172, shucks, if you've ever been in a Cessna 152, you know that working in tight spaces comes with the territory, especially if you're learning. Working in tight spaces. So you learn to work side by side with the reporter for 8 hours a day. I have stories after stories. If you want to hear them, certainly ask them the question and answer period. But I do have a lot of stories because you tend to work with a person very closely for 8 or more hours a day, and you have to be really friendly with them. And let me tell you, after a little while, some of these reporters, they get a little what's a good word for it? They get to be a handful sometimes. I'm sure I get to be a handful too, but it's important that even when you're kind of tired, at the end of the day, you still need to perform for the person that's next to you. Amazing how that works, because next thing you know, you get yourself in a crew environment in the airlines, and particularly you get yourself in a crew environment here in this helicopter, and you realize how desperately you really do need each other sometimes. Now, that's not to say you have to talk the whole time when you're in the cockpit. Doesn't mean you have to be total friends. My friend Roger Losaw, he said one of the first captains he ever worked with, they took off, got the plane going, flying, and as soon as they got to cruise, he heard a click. And that means the captain effectively muted my friend, and my friend said, "Hey, so you wanna get drinks or dinner after this?" Because they're now on a 3-day trip, and he goes, "Huh?" And his friend, my friend goes, "Oh, well, here, let me turn off my camera here so I can kind of act it out for you." And so my buddy's kind of like, "Oh yeah, what I said was, do you want to go eat dinner after this?" Captain goes, "Click, what's that, man?" "Yeah, I just figured, maybe something, once we land." Just to hang out or whatever. And the captain says to him, "I spend 12 hours a day almost with you, man. Do you think I really want to go eat?" It's like, ouch, harsh. You don't have to be that mean, but at the end of the day, you do want to be somewhat cordial, with your buddy. And if there's anything that the TV news business taught me, it's to not be a jerk. Even when you're tired, be there for the person that's next to you. All right, almost done here. 2 more slides. Actually, this is pretty much the last slide. I'm very excited that I was able to share my little story with you. One more thing I wanted to say about working in tight spaces, actually, things become, you learn to also become pretty efficient, right? You learn to be, I went from the pinpoint weather beast, and kind of near my last year in the TV news business, I went from the pinpoint weather beast into what they call the traverse, or the pinpoint weather tracker. So it was the weather beast and the weather tracker. This little thing is basically just a Chevy, Chevy SUV. It's basically a minivan, and it's loaded up, again, built by our intelligent engineers who are, you know, user-friendly engineers. And I drove around in this little bad boy. It became a lot more cramped in the weather beast, and you end up learning to work in really tight spaces. What does that mean? Well, you learn to put your knee board in just the right spot. You learn to kind of, you know, your lunch goes in certain little cubby holes. You just became a little bit more efficient. And so a few times on a few cross countries, I started realizing in the 172s, you realize you start to get kind of efficient, you know, especially if you have those long cross countries, on where you're going to put stuff. You know, you start getting kind of creative. It's the same thing with this, except that in the Traverse, I can actually pull over and get out. In the 172, you're kind of stuck, and you just kind of have to make sure that everything is within reach. So tiny little tidbits like that I picked up in the news business. Nonetheless, here we go. All right, I love this little clip. I'm just going to show it to you.
To put it in perspective, just in Southwest Denver, there are 22 cars stolen every single week.
Okay, did you guys hear the audio on that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. That's Ashley Michaels. I probably worked with her the most out of all the reporters. She liked to call me her work husband. I don't know what that, I think that's a flattering thing. So I took it as a compliment. But I ended up working an awful lot with Ashley. She actually has a real life husband, and it turns out he's also a photojournalist at Fox 31. So I'm not sure how he took it, but it was really cool working with Ashley. She really was one of those people that I got along with, and she really liked to get creative. That shot was done with a drone. So effectively, let me hit play one more time so you can kind of hear it again.
To put it in perspective, just in Southwest Denver, there are 22 cars stolen every single week.
Let me know if you guys ever want me to Photoshop your body, maybe onto, like, you know, Brad Pitt's body. I certainly do that every once in a while, don't you? Maybe not. I'm your Photoshop king, though. Let me know if you'd like that. I can totally get a hookup for you. That was really fun. I loved doing stuff like that, particularly when drones became a thing. We were able to do really, really cool shots like that. Let me show you a little behind the scenes of how that worked. So here's your drone shot right here. All I really did was I had Ashley start talking, blah, 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 blah. And then I had her pause for a second. And then the drone went up in the air as slow as it takes to kind of get up in the air. It only goes up at about maybe does about 300 feet a minute. Got into midair. And then once I got to the top of the shot right here, if you look carefully, you can see me right there. Once I got to the top of the shot, I had her finish the sentence. And then I froze the shot after she finished saying what she was saying, oh, 300 cars, whatever. And then that's when I started photoshopping everything into the rest of these parking spots. So yeah, there's that.
To put it in perspective, just in Southwest Denver, there are 22 cars stolen every single week.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, but that's fire. That's fire. That's awesome. Okay, anyway, thank you. Okay, that kind of covers those little pieces. To kind of round this whole thing out, my entire point was this. No matter where you came from in life, there are things that you bring into this piloting and this aviation world, whether it's piloting or whether it's helping run an airport, whether it's running an organization like Women in Aviation, whether it's whatever you do related, but particularly when it comes to aviation, you brought something special to this world of ours. And I think I'm bringing something special to this world. I eventually got to transfer into this, but I also bring vlogs, and I bring all this amazing video work that I think I do. I won an Emmy, I won 3. So I think I've got a general sense on how to make good videos, but I bring something special to this world. that makes it just a little bit better. And I've got a lot more to go. And the thing is, each one of you also brings something totally unique. I don't know what it is. I can't wait to see what you come up with. Might be old video skills, might be engineering skills. Might be, you might invent a better version of this. You might create the next amazing training program for students that people just can't get their eyes off of. And they're like, why didn't we ever think of teaching it this way? Whatever it is you bring, though, remember that you are absolutely an important piece to this whole puzzle because there's so few of us out there. Go back, take inventory of what you learned in the past and give credit to that. Connect the dots to what you do now. Acknowledge it. Remember where you came from and remember you are somebody. Thank you very much. I am open for questions. I appreciate your time.
All right, so show us your helicopter now, Angel. You want to take us
Are
on?
you guys ready for the? You all folks ready for the helicopter? I don't know if you can
I'm
handle this
ready.
helicopter. All right, cool. So Trimby and I, we tried a little technology and Katie, and we kind of tested something. So we're gonna turn on Angel Cam. By the way, for pronouncing my name, if you smile at the end, Angel, you'll get the accent, which is kind of cool. So if you say Angel, then you're not gonna get it quite right. But if you want to sound Puerto Riqueño, Angel, just smile at the end. All right, here we go. Let's switch cameras. You got me on there. You spotlighted it. Awesome. I can see you have it on. So, oh, was it Angel? Okay. Anyway, here we go. All right. So you can see my little setup. I had a little camera actually on the tripod, and don't worry if I look like I'm super well lit. That's not your fault. If you think your shot looks dark and mine looks, oh, Angel, just amazing complexion. No, I TV'd it up for a little bit for you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is November 6th Uniform X-Ray. As you'll notice, this is the helicopter well, you might not actually notice. This is kind of cool. You'll notice there are absolutely no logos on this helicopter. It's not because we're trying to be top secret, but it's for a very interesting reason that a lot of people don't know. This machine right here is actually Skyfox, Copter 2, or Sky 2, Sky 9, Air Tracker 7, and Copter 4. This one helicopter, and more specifically, this one camera right here, feeds all of the breaking news and all the video you see from the sky that's done from the helicopter for all of the TV stations in Denver. It was about 8 years ago that all the TV stations started consolidating their use of the helicopter for safety reasons, but also for budgetary reasons. And so there was a pretty tragic accident in Phoenix, in the Phoenix market, where a couple of helicopters collided about a decade ago, fatal crash. And of course, that made people think a little bit about why were those helicopters in the same place? Well, it's because they were covering the same exact news. And they realized, well, then if all the helicopters are in the same spot at the same time, why do we really need that? There's no exclusivity. Why don't we just kind of agree to start sharing that? Well, they put it all together and they realized from market to market, they started coming up with this idea that they could go ahead and just share a chopper. So this is pretty much the result of years and years. And what happened is that I actually no longer work for the TV stations. When I quit, I now work for this company called Helicopters Incorporated. Trimby, by the way, let me know if my audio cuts out as I get to this back side of the helicopter here. I am getting a little bit away from my microphone, but actually, mic check real quick. Trimby, you guys still hear me?
Yep, you're fine.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So this big blue helicopter, if you're ever wondering whether it's me or whether it's a medical helicopter, some of the telltale signs are, well, from below, it looks kind of like this, and you're going to see this big white little dish antenna thing here. So that antenna right there, that round pod that's on the belly of the helicopter, it's about 2.5 feet diameter wide. It's a rotating antenna. So what happens is as we take off, that antenna, to keep our signal strong, it has to keep, there's a little rotating antenna inside, and it stays pointed towards Lookout Mountain. Lookout Mountain is where the receiver for all of the TV stations are. They receive our signal, and so that little pod kind of spins around. So regardless, it just knows automatically where Lookout Mountain is. So regardless of where we are in space, whether we're yawed, rolled, whether we are pitching up, pitching down, climbing, descending, whatever. It uses GPS and some telemetry data to keep this antenna aligned with Lookout Mountain. So that's pretty cool. And that's microwave energy, but it's a pretty low wattage. A lot of people ask questions like that. If you have more questions about it, I can go more into detail, but I'll continue on with our little tour. So every single day, I just kind of find my way into the helicopter like this, our beautiful Ecuriel A-Star. All right, I just grab this little handle, pop on open, and next thing I know, I'm walking into my office, which is super, super cool. I climb on in. First of all, your pilot, let me open this door over here, sits over here. He swears his seat sucks and mine is amazing, I guess. There's a much for lumbar support there. Nonetheless, you can see, let's go ahead and put you folks in the pilot seat like that. And that's kind of what it looks like to a pilot. Well, I guess if you saw the hangar doors, that'd be kind of scary. But nonetheless, kind of in the pilot seat. And this is kind of something I wanted to really show you all because I had never seen this in my career before until I came here. This right here is one of those, what they call the radar altimeters. Like that's a thing. It's super cool. It shoots radar, it's radar, just like Doppler, down at the ground. And then it measures your absolute altitude. And that's actually a test question. If you guys have ever seen that whole, oh, what's absolute altitude? It's your actual altitude above any point over the ground. This thing can measure it. So helicopter pilots, they don't like to really go more than like 1,000 AGL. They really like to hug the ground. And you can see him, I think it was actually my latest vlog episode at heycameraman.fun. That's heycameraman.fun, shameless plug. You can see this really cool episode that I have where we were flying over the mountains and through the mountain ranges. I call it Mountain Flying is Fun. And it ended up being, you'll see some of the shots actually look like drone shots because we're so close to the mountain, to the tops of the peaks and the ground and stuff. Nonetheless, pilot sits there. And then this is what's up. This is where my magic happens right here. It's basically all my years. Here's another correlative item. All my years of playing Nintendo have finally paid off. This is the remote controller. So what I do is I basically slap this little bad boy on my lap like this. There we go. And I get buckled in. And I have this little monitor here for viewing the shot. And then, of course, I can play my Super Mario Brothers games here. Or I guess I can control a camera too. But basically, I can go tilt forward, pitch the camera down, pitch the camera up, left, right. I have a little bit of roll available to me. And then all those camera kind of adjustments like focus and you know, my iris to make it brighter and darker, shutter speeds, all these different shadings and whatnot to make the shot just a little bit better. So that goes there. And then we just record. And this is kind of the part that I find hilarious. Maybe not all of you will, but all of this, millions and millions of dollars, tons of paychecks, all right? All this stuff just to put it on an SD card. Like literally this whole machine, and it's all just to give you that. This is the biggest SD card recorder ever. And the most expensive video you've ever paid for. And if you're curious, it's about $50 a minute to operate this machine. As soon as they start this helicopter, just getting the ATIS will cost you $150. You know what I'm saying? They put a lot of money into this. Yeah, $50 a minute. That's on average. I just kind of did the math to make it easy. It's more complicated in some circumstances, but yeah. So when they decide to launch us, and we have a contract for 800 hours a year, in case you were curious. So 800 hours a year, and then we charge extra for anything on top of that. But you can imagine how expensive that contract is, right? I'm a pretty lucky dude though, to be able to do this, and I get paid pretty well to do it too. So it's a little bit of a hard job. So if your next question is, are you gonna, go CFI full time? It's going to be a really hard sell. All right, let me put this SD card away. And anything you all want to see in the chopper? There's a whole lot to see here. So I'll let you kind of take the reins there, Trimby. Let me know if there's anything.
Well, I have a question on what you have in your lab. Like, I'm sure that you are like the expert on handling that, but who taught you specifically how to be the expert on that thing that you're holding in your lap?
Great question. The expert on handling it taught me to be the expert on handling it. I actually got trained by it gets passed along, but this is actually shot over systems. If your folks are ever looking for a great gimbal system to put on your bird, if you're ever designing, if you're ever in a position where you can maybe purchase a gimbal system, and I'll show you the gimbal up front here in a moment. But Shot Over Systems, they're called Shot Over. Google them. Super great company, man. Their customer service is through the roof. They will fly someone out, of course, for the money you're paying, they should, but they will fly somebody out to troubleshoot your system for you. But they have pretty decent, really good training curriculum. For the most part, though, one of the caveats of taking this job on is you do have to have some basic photography skills, right? You have to kind of understand, they're going to teach you how to set a back focus and all these sort of photography technical terms. And they can't teach you how to find the breaking news, how to find a needle in a haystack, so to speak. Like when they tell you, when there's TV stations, and this is a real request, they'll say, hey, can you find us a brewery in Golden? And we're not talking about Coors. We just need like any other random brewery, but in Golden. And you're in midair, right? And now you're like, how can you give me coordinates, anything? No, they totally expect you to just figure it out. So you can't get trained for that, right? Like I've been on the ground in Denver for those 15 years that I was a cameraman. I kind of know where a lot of things are, so they can trust that I'm going to be able to find them what they're looking for.
Cool.
Oh,
I have a question for you.
What we can do. Go right ahead.
What altitude do you typically fly at when you're getting like, quote unquote, the money shot for the news? Because I don't have a lot of time in helicopters, but I did once fly with the military, and they told us that they could only go as low as 500 feet with civilians but that was pretty high for them to fly at the time. So I have to imagine that if you get like the best shot, you're getting pretty close to the action, but.
I'm not sure what the military needs to, the military, especially when over civilian property, they probably have to certainly should be careful, and they don't really have a reason. This camera with a 1200 millimeter plus a 2x extender to 24 zoom, I can read a license plate with this thing from 1,000 feet AGL and a mile and a half away.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's 1,000 AGL is what we need. We don't need to get any lower because we start getting noise complaints, right? We're still trying to be good neighbors.
Right.
But yeah, this monster is a very, very kind of in the wrong hands, it's too great a power to handle. But it's a very good lens. So good question, great question. We don't need to get too close.
I have another question for you, Angel. So when you're flying and your pilot he doesn't have a co-pilot, but in an emergency, have you taken like a pinch hitter course on how to land the helicopter? Or emergencies, or
we do
as
have
a pilot, I'm
well,
assuming that there's certain things you can do, like take over radios or help them.
yes.
With
So we've
something.
had that discussion. I was going to pull this up. This is for your eyes only, people. We had an actual emergency here, so I'm going to see if I can find my video. We had to land not too long ago. Let me type the word helicopter in my search here, and I'll just tell you this story. We had an urgency, not an emergency necessarily, but we had a urgent situation where he had one of those amber lights come on, and when I say one of those amber lights, I don't know what constitutes a real big problem in this helicopter specifically or not. I'm a little bit of a nerd, obviously. I love aviation, but anyway, whatever it was enough to scare my pilot Bo, and we ended up landing on a rooftop in Arvada. This was a closed, and I say a rooftop, I guess this is the top of a parking garage. So we ended up landing there. There's Bo. The cops came out. They actually brought us some Gatorade. It was super awesome. And it turns out there was just a broken cable back here. And that cable is to some mechanism that tells him that the tail rotor is starting to grind its gears and it's starting to make metal and it could fail. If that cable breaks, it gives you the same indication, just out of safety. So immediately he put this helicopter down on top of a roof. We had discussed this kind of emergency before. Really, the extent of my knowledge, if we can switch cameras real quick, Trimby, and spotlight the main camera video here, because my arm's getting really tired of holding this up.
This one here?
There we go. Thank you, my lady.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Muchas gracias. Thank you. So we do go, there's a limited amount of things I can do. It's really hard to get up front. They took out the second stick. So you can do dual training here, but they only put that second stick in there when these guys are coming up for recurrency. So as a pilot, if you come over here, you'll pretty much have a single stick. I'm not exactly sure why. Oh, you know what? I do know why. We used to have a radio, the KOA news radio guy. His name's John Morrissey. He used to do his traffic reports from here, but due to COVID, they reduced the crew to just the pilot and a camera guy. And so now John does his radio traffic reports from the ground. But he was a pretty tall guy, and the stick was just really uncomfortable. It was just kind of sitting there, and he's like 6'4" or something. So it was banging against his knees. In a pinch, I can't really do a whole lot. I've certainly imagined in my head ahead of time what would I have to do. I figure I probably want to keep the speed going forward and the collective. I know what all the mechanisms do. I know what all the levers and stuff do. If Bo were to or Nate, one of our pilots, were to kind of become incapacitated. But at the end of the day, it's no serious, right? There's no chute to pull. What I can do is I can help if we were to land hard, maybe a fire and whatnot. I do know how to immediately shut down all of the engine and the whole aircraft systems really, really quickly. I know all the buttons to touch on that. So there isn't a whole lot. You're right. The risk factor definitely goes up a lot in this machine. But incapacitation would probably be about the only thing I can't quite handle. But believe me, I know about resignation, and I'm not giving up. And if that ever happens for some reason, Bo has a bad meal that night, the night before, and suddenly passes out because he ate the fish. I'm certainly going to try darn as hard as I can to get this thing on the ground safely. I'm going to find a field somewhere, and you're going to see me smiling outside the helicopter at some point, going like, "We did it!" And somebody get Bo, some Pepto-Bismol. Anyway, so hopefully that answers your question.
This was so fun. Angel, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for having me. Please be sure to, if you have a chance, I know it's a little bit of an ask, but if you can visit my YouTube channel. I actually have a URL for it to make it easy for you. It's heycameraman.fun. I'm just going to show you the screen on it here real quick. I kind of had it up here a second ago. Heycameraman.fun. And here comes the share. And went the share.
Yeah, ladies, thanks for joining in. I'm going to unmute you all so you can all say hip hip hooray. And thank you, Mr. Angel.
Thank you very much. If you guys can see, there it is.
Yep, we see it.
So this is my YouTube channel. Yep, hey cameraman, I appreciate it. Got lots of cool vlogs, man. Thank you to Women in Aviation, Mile High chapter. There's the hypoxia one right there. It's pretty hilarious. I get pretty high in the hypoxia chamber. I basically am like the first one to fail after about 2 minutes. Yeah, it was pretty bad. So, whatever. I have a whole bunch of cameraman related stuff here. And if you guys also, by the way, if you ever get a chance to do the chamber, please do. Trimby, are you going to try to get the FAA? Are you petitioning them to get this thing back?
Yeah, they're coming back. They're getting their 2021 schedule right now, and they've promised to come back. Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep, they're coming.
So if you don't mind, maybe like and subscribe, give it a view. Oh, look at that! One of you subscribed. Look at that, I'm up to 207. Thank you. I appreciate it. So yeah, and there's a whole bunch of information there. This one's really good because we end up diverting, to Colorado Springs. Anyway, I'm rambling. Nonetheless, thank you very much. If you could like and subscribe, that's my only pitch. And if you do want to fly a Cirrus, I'm totally your instructor. Come on down. You don't have to tell your home flight school, okay? I promise I won't call them. We'll go have fun in a Cirrus.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.